Hello again. My name is Vasia Madesi and I'm working as a project manager in BLabs in Greece. I'm also the coordinator of the Gender Equality Academy project, and I would like to welcome you to today's webinar, which is Gender Bias in Academic Recruitment Promotion, Recognizing and Overcoming It. Before we start with the main presentations, and actually as people are still getting connected to today's webinar, I would like to say a few things about the project. So what Gender Equality Academy does. We have realized that there are many gender equality programs, many projects, and a great gain knowledge around. At the same time, we witness that gender analysis remains rarely appropriated within research projects, while there is a small proportion of researchers and practitioners that are familiar with theoretical and methodological concepts of gender and feminist scholarships. For this region, we are running the Gender Equality Academy project, which is funded by the Horizon 2020 project for research and innovation. And it develops and implements a high-quality capacity building program on gender equality in research, innovation, and higher education. So under the realms of this project, we are offering different training sessions in different formats. We are offering in-person training sessions, interactive participatory workshops, webinars, summer schools, train the trainer sessions, and an open collaborative online course. As you understand now, because of the pandemic, we are only able to offer online training sessions and webinars. And we would like to see you in one of them if you enjoy today's webinar, of course. We are a consortium of partners with strong experience in gender equality projects all over Europe. And I would like to let you know that this webinar will be recorded and will be uploaded on our YouTube channel, Gender Equality Academy EU, where you can subscribe and maybe you can check out the webinars that have already been performed, and they are available there for you. I would like to let you know also that a lot of training sessions are coming up this November, but we will be able to check them out by the end of this session, more specifically. And before I give the floor to one of my colleagues, I would like to let you know that we are live tweeting. So you can join us with your impressions via Twitter, and you can always type your questions and impressions in the chat box. So thank you very much from my side, and without any further delay, I give the floor to Maria.
Yes, thank you, Vasia. Good afternoon also from my side. My name is Maria San Giuliano from Smart Venice. We are one of the GE Academy partners, particularly taking care of the e-learning component, the webinar series of the program, and the doc, the online e-learning course. Together with my colleague Natasha Sega, we are going to take care of the moderation today. So as Vasia has anticipated, GE Academy is a complex and multi-format program. Webinars are conceived to make knowledge available and good practices examples available and shared to a wider audience, but still taking a compact and quite short format. Along the year 2020, we have already delivered 12 webinars. And normally in GE Academy, we use webinars as introductory sessions to longer, normally face-to-face trainings, which now we have switched to online mode as well during the pandemic. So today, we will deal with a challenging issue of bias in recruitment processes. What we aim at allowing you to learn today is basically raise the awareness and sensitize about benefits of recruiting diverse talents, but also better understand how bias is embedded in actual recruitment processes, tools, and also the lexicon in higher education institutions and research organizations. And we would also like you to familiarize with existing promising and good practices. So we have invited two keynote speakers for today. Jadranka Gvozdanovic from LERU, the League of European Research Universities, and a professor in Heidelberg University, and she will give us an introductory speech, let's say, providing us with an evidence-based representation of the problems at stake, the main policy frameworks, and some initial guidelines for solutions. And then the second presentation from Heidi Martens and Andrea Bardin from Leuven University in Belgium will rather share a good practice which they have been implementing with good results for several years already. So here you can see the webinar agenda more in details. We will have a Q&A session. So I really invite you to keep staying with us until the very end, because the Q&A will allow you to interact with our speakers. And finally, a wrap up and a presentation of the next upcoming online sessions from GE Academy. And with this, I would then give the floor to Natasha for some few hints on the technicalities.
Thank you, Maria, and good afternoon also from my side. My name is Natasha Sega, and I collaborate with Smart Venice in the GE Academy project. So just to let you know how the question and answer will work, you will use the chat box to just report technical issues to the host or to communicate with each other, while the question and answer will happen all in the question and answer button that you can find at the bottom of your screen, in which you can type the question you want to pose to the speakers also during the presentation. We will collect them and pose to the speakers in the question and answer session. Be careful before typing in the chat. Please select who you want to address your question. All panelists is to select only in case of technical issues, while all panelists and attendees is for all the other communication. Without further delay, I'm glad to introduce you to our first speaker, Jadranka Gvozdanovic, who is the chair of the LERU Group on Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. She's also professor of linguistics at the Heidelberg University and a gender expert. Her focus is mostly on the modification of structural factors that involves all levels of institution and the importance of the communication in this. Jadranka, without further delay, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Welcome to everybody. Thank you for participating, and thank you for organizing this. I shall have a brief presentation about what we are really dealing with. Oh my God, sorry.
We can see your screen now. Oh, yeah.
Yes, but it was not the beginning of my screen. That's a bit of a problem. I hope this is better now. I want to get it big, but I want it back. I'm sorry. For some reason, it was jumping. I'm coming to it. Yes, so I'm there. And now I'm trying to make it big. And for some reason,
you can go back with the arrow, but it was there. Or I can share it if you want.
Well, if you could do this, yes, perhaps,
yeah, sure.
But because I don't know what's happening there. why it is jumping to where it should not be. But I can try, perhaps it will work now. Let us see. No, I don't know. It's could you please share it?
Yes, sure.
So thank you so much. Can you then briefly go to the other one? I can probably not shift this. Oh yes, I can. No. So I'm going to tell you about bias mechanisms which are not rational, but which to a large, not full extent, but to a large extent determine our acting. And so we grow up with certain preconceived ideas about societies, about how things function also in structures, and we kind of tend to act in accordance with them unless we are really faced with other evidence. And the idea of today's session is to show you this other evidence, to show what is happening and how this can be mitigated. Please, next slide. So we are going to address several issues. I shall not read them all now because they will come in this lesson. So we are going first to talk about legally equal rights and chances for all in academia. But the legal thing is wonderfully ruled and ordered. However, the reality looks a bit different. Please, next one. So concerning the legal side, there is a European Charter of researchers and the European Code of Conduct for the recruitment of researchers. And this has been there since 2005, and more than 1,200 institutions and also countries have signed it. And this charter, which you can find online, prescribes non-discrimination, and very specifically, you are not allowed to discriminate anybody on the basis of age, gender, ethnic, national, social origin, religion, and so on. And we also have national laws guaranteeing equality of all. So legally, Europe seems to be a wonderful place to be. However, please, next slide. This is, by the way, the picture of what we are talking about, the European Charter of Researchers, which you can find, please, next slide. These are the principles in this charter and code of conduct, the principles of transparency, of fair criteria and selection processes, of a broader judgment, not only research, but also different achievements and qualifications, also a broader research to mobility, also qualifying virtual mobility as mobility, and recognizing all kinds of qualifications which come into play for academic leaders. And there are clear rules and explicit guidelines for the recruitment and appointments. Please, next slide. However, what we see, and we have clear facts there, the academia loses talented women. Please, next one. The problem is, of course, this well-known leaky pipeline, that we can see that women are here orange, are even in Europe represented to more than 50%. They finish their studies even better than their male colleagues, and this is a systematic pattern over many years, and then it starts going down. It starts at the PhD, where they are still very good, but a lesser percentage of women takes on a PhD. And then after the PhD, at the postdoc level, it continues a little bit. And then, as we can see there underneath, it's written grade C. So this is the assistant professorship. This is where it starts going down a little bit. And then the more we are approaching the top of the career, it goes down drastically to, on the average, unfortunately, you can't see it now well, to 24% at the professorial level, which means that a talented woman who starts and has very good results in her studies has, in fact, a much lesser chance to achieve a professorship, and it is almost 6 times less. Please, can we proceed? And this means, moreover, that the pool of talented women is not sufficiently taken into consideration for further applications. So we have talented postdocs, but out of them, a significantly lower percentage of associate professors is recruited, and even more so for full professors. Please, the next one. And here you see a slide in STEM fields. So what we are talking about is not only the prototypical humanities and social sciences, where the percentage of women goes down, but in fact STEM, meaning natural sciences, exhibits the same pattern. So proportionally, they end up at around 15%, and it is significantly lower than how they've started. There you can see that there is a higher percentage of PhD, because in natural sciences, PhD is very important for your career prospects, but then it goes down. So lots of talented women leave the academia, and this is a problem. This is also an economic problem on top of research, a scientific problem. It means a lot of capacity is lost. And why? Because women are, and this we can see on the basis of research projects written by female applicants, or in part or supervised by female applicants, that the success rate here expressed as projects ranked A is much higher for women than the percentage of their participation, meaning that women in the end produce more best projects ranked A and second best projects ranked B, and significantly less bad projects. So this means they are scientifically very well qualified. Please, next slide. Women are also capable leaders. There's investigation, for example, Zenger and Folkman, 2012, showing that women are better at taking initiative, integrity, honesty. Women are better at motivating others, organizing teamwork. They are better at communicating. They are better at innovating. They are only a bit less good in strategic planning, and this is very crucial. This shows that strategic planning, and in fact, as we know, also networking, is a very important aspect, which brings male scholars faster into leading positions. Next slide, please. So what are we facing here? What we are facing here is implicit bias, but as we can expect based on the last thing I told you about strategic planning, also structural and strategic aspects are involved. Next one, please. So we do have bias. This means that female academic careers are more difficult because the judgment of female performance is not equal to judgment of male performance. Even everybody knows that, in fact, women are often traditionally expected to deliver more to be judged the same. And this is bias. So implicit bias plays a role in processes where important career decisions are made. And this bias is culturally formed. It is the expectation that leaders are mainly male and that professors are predominantly male. May I have the next slide, please? And there is this investigation well known. If you take an identical CV and just give it a male name or a female name, and you let scholars, and here we are talking even about psychologists, about natural scientists, judge the CV and decide who would you hire. In this case, it was a laboratory position. But then you see that a male name attached to a CV leads to the judgment of higher competence, higher ability, higher mentoring, and please, next slide, a lot more money to be paid this person. It is incredible. What is more incredible is that even female psychologists who are trained to know about bias do the same, because of course there is structural pressure within the institution, and especially for younger staff members there is a lot of structural pressure. And this holds even for women, which is kind of striking, but especially the younger women do not feel secure enough to pronounce the different judgment. But at the same time, this is negatively affecting especially women at the early career stages. And this, of course, perpetuates later. Please, next slide. Also, we should be very aware about the language of the judgments. And there is also bias in the language. Women are commonly described as more communal and less agentic. Well, and this is done in a subtle way. I mean, that women are often praised for being able to combine family obligations with careers and so on. So putting a focus on family obligations, whereas in an academic position, other qualities are ranked higher. So there's this investigation by Madeira et al. That communal characteristics have a negative correlation with academic excellence. And also the amount of text is very important. How much text do you dedicate to achievements in certain areas? For example, acquisition of funding. I've seen so many recommendations and really seen that the praise for research funding for women is usually done with less words. Even it is just less words, and it does have the effect of producing an impression of less value. Please, next slide. Also, there are many doubt raisers, like, oh, this is a very good candidate, this woman. She has a very good potential to grow, suggesting she's not there yet. This is a kind of doubt raiser or faint praise. And all this should be taken into account very carefully when judging recommendations for women. And and one should try to really compare always on an equal basis, and possibly have forms to make this easier. Next slide, please. So what is the way out? I mean, we have seen there is bias, but there is also a lot of institutional organization, which in fact enables persistence of bias. Please, next slide. So one of these is the question of open versus closed recruitment and selection. There was investigation at Aarhus University showing that in closed hirings, meaning when there was no open advertisement of a position, that only 12% of women applied. But when, I mean, a closed hiring means that it is advertised only at the university, on the university site, internet site. And this is a clear signal. But with open hirings in the newspapers and so on, there was a 23% of applicants for professorships. We are now talking about professorships. Now, what can you do? I mean, you should really approach this in a very systematic way and say, look, we have a disproportionately low percentage of female professors. How can we improve this? And it can be then improved by very clear planning that you discuss with specific subjects what is to be expected over the coming years. How many free professorships? What is the situation in the area? Are there women? And then to really oblige search committees to really search for female candidates and tell them to apply, to then pass the normal application process. And so faculties should formulate plans and monitor the development, and there should be accountability, clear accountability, not just the good intention, but deans and heads of departments should be accountable. Next slide, please. Here you can see the way how we are doing it in Heidelberg, that you always say the pool of the percentage of women at one career stage is the pool for the potential applicants for the next career stage. And you should try to get the next career stage at the same level. This is generally done in Germany. But what we are doing in Heidelberg is to make it more specific, to really count over 3 years what is the average level of women at the career stage in a specific subject. And then say the next stage should agree with it. And as far as you can see on the picture, this is a medical faculty with 17.2% of women at the habilitation or junior professorship, whereas 46.8% could be expected. And so then you discuss it with the faculty, you discuss it with the university leadership. How can this be improved? And so it's painstaking, but a clear process. Please, next slide. Also, in order to get more female applicants, the academia should be an optimal workplace. Please, next slide. Including that it should be known that, for example, precarious positions are equally divided over young female and male applicants. She figures 2018 shows that in Europe as a whole, this is not the case. So precarious positions are more often given to women. And such things should be monitored and corrected. Also, how many permanent positions are given to whom. They should all be monitored. Also, other aspects like support for researchers who are parents and so on. Please, next slide. Also, gender pay gap is a major point, and gender pay gap is unfortunately in Europe larger at universities than in the economics at large. And here you get just a few examples of countries which show that with the younger generations, the gender pay gap is getting corrected, but we see is corrected in a major way. For example, in the UK and in Ireland, and this is thanks to the program of Athena Swan, which really forces you to specifically look at the gender pay gap and formulate possible prospects of development. And for example, Croatia, which had a major improvement in the course of application for the European Union. Please, next one. And then about recruitment and selection processes. We shall have to do this very briefly. So it is important to have transparency of advertising, of clear formulations, requirements of the job, about career perspectives of the job, and in a standardized way. Please, next one. Then preparation for selection. It is very important to train the committee to have balanced selection committees, also gender balanced. It is important to have vanguards. This will be the next talk. And it is important to have selection criteria before the selection process. Please, next one. And it is also important to evaluate CVs in the perspective of lifelong learning, of management, of other characteristics. Please, next one. It is also important to evaluate, especially applicants for professorships, as good researchers in the sense of quality above quantity, also creativity, innovation, but also to innovate capacity for research-oriented teaching and for management. And just to mention a recent publication published this year on the gender sensitive university with some interesting articles. And the next slide, please. LERU publications. There are several of them, and you can find them all on leru.org. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'm looking forward to questions. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks a lot, Jadranka. It was really a very comprehensive and interesting presentation. We will comment and post questions later. And just to present our next two speakers.
Yes, thank you, Maria. So let's go directly to our next speakers, who are Heidi Mertens and Andrea Berdin from the Leuven University Diversity Policy Office. Heidi is the coordinator of this office, and in close collaboration with her teams, she coordinates the Leuven Diversity Policy. She's also responsible for the Leuven Harassment Desk. Andrea she's a policy advisor at Leuven Diversity Policy Office with a focus on human resources and gender and diversity. His policy work is focused on recruitment, inclusion, and well-being of academic and non-academic staff, and she supports the gender vanguards that who they will speak about now. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. First, I would like to thank Jadranka for the very rich inspiration. And I realized that being partner in the LERU policy group on the topic of gender really inspired us the last years, also for our own gender policy plans in our own university. Yeah. So we would like to show you an example of a practice. As Jadranka already said, we want to share our experiences with the gender vanguards at KU Leuven on how we can try to interrupt, and I say try, because it's always try, to interrupt gender biases in academia. Andrea and I, we will do the presentation, and we just shared the slides between the two of us, and we are both also looking forward to your questions. So we briefly would like to share our practice by first telling something about the bigger picture of our gender action plans in our university. Our policy plans with goals and actions and reports, how we work. And as part of that, we would like to show how gender vanguards for us constitute quite a promising practice. We want to tell you something on how we installed them, the preconditions, how we did support them and are still supporting them the day of today. And what we learned after 5 years of gender vanguards. Andrea did an evaluation by interviewing the gender vanguards. So we are very happy to share the results of that interviews and what we can learn from their own experiences. And finally, we will just, we want to share some interesting suggested readings. So what about KU Leuven and our own context where we are working in? So KU Leuven is a Belgian university. It's research and education oriented. We have more than 55 students and more than 12,000 staff members. That makes us the biggest university from the lower countries, Netherlands and Belgium. And our primary language is Dutch, although several programs are in English. And we also see we have more and more international recruitment, and there we see also lots of female inflow from other countries. So that's an interesting topic for us to learn from as well. Why am I showing this? We are organized in 16 faculties. And that makes policy not so simple, because the power basis actually is really organized by the faculties itself. And we have a central policy, but the central policy is more a policy where we support the faculties in their own local policies. And also recruitment, selection, the flow through is organized by the local faculties, and the faculties, they have their own selection boards and committees, and the central management or the central policy is only confirming actually most of the time what the advices and the proposals of the local selection committees. So we realized from the beginning with our gender action plans that just one central policy was not going to work, that we really need the accountability and the responsibility of the local faculty leaders and groups within these faculties. Just to show you that gender vanguards is not like the one magic trick to solve or to narrow the scissors. This is a scissor of KU Leuven from December 2019, where the black line represents the men and the purple women. It looks very similar as the she figures that Jadranka just showed us. And we also see that the scissors during the time are still closing very, very slow. And we have discussions if it's going too slow. We see at the level of master that we have more female students. We have 56% of female students. So we start with more women. But then we see on the postdoc level, there is a huge threshold. And we also see that we are not making any progress last years. more women don't apply for a second term of postdoc or for assistant professorship. Although the number of associate professors is like 41% in 2019. So there we see an evolution. In 2002, we only had 20%. So that's going better right now. And we have our target number is 50% there. So we try to reach the 50%. But then, as you can see, the higher we go, the lower, the bigger the gap becomes. So that's really still a huge problem. It's still dominated, as we see at the full professors there, it's dominated by almost retired male professors. And we also get a signal from younger women that senior female professors are not a role model anymore because they are combining so many tasks in boards and their work life is not balanced. So based upon that, we are also reflecting upon a kind of program we need to think about, or we need to develop on how can we attract more female full professors actually on that level directly, because when we have to wait until all our men are retired on that levels, we still have to wait for like 10 or 15 or almost 20 years. So and also on the level of postdoc there, as you can see, if women are not applying for assistant professors, then we really have a problem. So we are losing lots of female talent. Okay, so that's a bit our figure for KU Leuven. Then our gender action plans. Also, as Jadranka said, we realized already, it's not already, but we have these plans since like 22 years. And already from that period, we realized that a systemic approach is necessary, that we really need to focus on the different levels, on the different thresholds, on procedures, on culture, and so on. So there are 5 lines of actions. That's about spreading awareness on gender implicit bias, actions on recruitment and promotion procedures, about representation, of course, gender balanced representations in leadership. And there we really see that we still have lots of work. It's only with this rector since 3 years, the decision was made to create a board with 50% of female vice directors and 50% of male vice directors, to give an example. But it's quite new. And so we still have lots of work in other boards. Then on work-life balance, it's the main topic. And finally, monitoring. It's so important. We keep on monitoring on all these different thresholds, not only with this showing the scissors, but also on promotion, on salary, and so on. Then with these vanguards, with the gender vanguards, actually, we are trying to work on the first 2 lines of action, on spreading awareness and on really, interrupting the recruitment and promotion procedure. And then, Andrea, I give you the floor.
Yes, yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I will introduce you to our gender vanguards, but before I do that, I want to situate them in a broader policy on recruitment, because we can't understand what they do without the instruments that they also have. So in our recruitment, we strive for open, transparent, and merit-based recruitments. And for professorships, there's a few instruments in place which we hope contributes to that. And 2 important ones are the Biosketch and the effective research time, which are 2 measures that aim to facilitate a qualitative and holistic assessment of any application file. So people are asked to report non-academic career breaks, be it parental leave, sickness, a time of non-academic career, in order to validate non-linear career paths and to be able to compare candidates on an equal and honest basis. And second, people are asked to write a Biosketch, quite an elaborate document, where they contextualize their application and elaborate on any choices, their strengths, career changes, their ambitions, in order, again, to give the assessment committee the possibility to make a holistic assessment of a candidate, to highlight personal choices and for people to set their own accents, be it education or very much dedicated to science communication, and in that way also allowing for more diversity. The assessment or selection committees are also trained on open, transparent and merit-based recruitment and on how they can reach qualitative decision-making ways in groups. And this also includes training on implicit bias. And in the recruitment procedures, we're monitoring the gender data, so both of applicants and of those who are selected and then promoted. And lastly, a gender vanguard sits on each assessment and promotion committee. It's important though to emphasize within a whole recruitment procedure, the assessment committee comes in a later phase. So promotion or recruitment is done on a faculty level, where a vacancy is written out, then a search committee assembled that scouts good candidates and convinces them to apply. And it's only once people have applied that the assessment committee actually comes into place, and they assess the files, do the interviews, and make the rank. So it's there that the gender vanguards are situated. Now, who are the gender vanguards, and what is their role? The gender vanguards are full committee members. So like all the other members, they've been elected to the selection committee, and they are either professors or full professors in rank. And they are elected within the committee, so that is supported by the faculty dean and the committee president. They are asked to find a member who has an interest in gender equality, and to also take there into account that both men and women are equally fit for this job, to also ensure that not a few women on selection committees get the responsibility of guarding the gender equality on their own. They have or are asked to perform 4 tasks: to monitor the number of female and male candidates in each recruitment or promotion round, as a way of using that as a sounding board for the whole committee; to guard a gender-sensitive assessment of all candidates, making sure that only effective research time is taken into account, that people approach candidates not just in a quantitative way, but qualitatively and holistically. And most importantly, they have been trained to recognize implicit biases and gendered language, and they are asked to explicitly pay attention to that, both in conversations within the committee, in interviews, and in any communication towards the candidates, and as well in how the candidates are ranked. And lastly, they are asked to, within the spirit of transparent recruitment, to ensure that the candidates receive constructive feedback, which is formulated in a gender-neutral and unambiguous way. And Heidi, I'll give this back to you now.
Yeah, okay. So why are we doing this? We got some inspiration, of course. We didn't just invent this, but we were inspired by the German example, where for a longer period already, the participation of such a gender vanguard is integrated in the committees, in the selection committees. However, we see in Germany that the position is rarely filled by a peer, a full member of the committee, but more frequently a deputy of the Equal Opportunities Service of the university, or an Equal Opportunities Officer, for example, such as I am one, or Andrea is one. So, for example, that's a good example as well at the University of Freiburg, Jadranka. you call that a Gleichstellungsbeauftrager, if I pronounce it correct. But it's a person who's really taking care of gender equality in the committees. And also it's included in the behavioral code of the commissions. So why did we choose for not to add someone such as an equal opportunity officer, but really to ask to an already existing member of the committee to become a gender vanguard? The reason there actually is that we really wanted to focus on accountability and existing authority. And really working on the expertise of the already existing members of the committee. Therefore, we like to refer to the advice paper from Lero on implicit bias there. We already did hear the presentation on this, so we are happy we can confirm that these principles are very important. And it's also, we can also see that in the research of Kalev et al., who did research on best practices and effectiveness of measures. And Kalev could see that accountability and authority are very important aspects if we really want to be efficient, and that if we really want to reach results in the measures that we are taking. For example, if we only would focus on trainings, we would just lose the efficacy. And therefore, yes, we thought it's important really to focus on interrupting the structure, interrupting the organization, making people really accountable, and that we as policy advisors or equal opportunity officers would more elaborate on trainings and so on, so they can become experts in their own field. So that's just a suggested reading here we want to offer. Okay, then yeah, what were the required conditions then 5 years ago when they were appointed, and what kind of support is important? And there we see the startup phase. From that point of view of accountability, we did ask the faculty leaders, as I told in the beginning, the faculty leaders, the deans, they are in power actually for their own committees, selection committees. So we did ask to the faculty leaders and the chairs of the assessment committees to reflect together upon who would be a good gender vanguard to appoint from the existing members. So they did the selection of the gender vanguards. And we asked full support of involvement of the university leaders and faculty leaders. So we did bring them together, not only the gender vanguards, but also the deans. And there was a plan approved by the university board where also the deans were appointed as a kind of vanguards themselves, because they also have the power, or they are a very, how do you say that, a necessary and important, they have an important role in the selection process, so that the gender vanguards of the committees wouldn't be very alone in their committee, but that the deans also would take an accountable role. So they would work together. So they all got trainings by our Dutch colleagues Marieke van den Brink, also by Kurt Reis, and our own gender expert in university, Colette van Laar. And we really focused on bias, on implicit bias in how they really can realize and also spread the message in their own committees that indeed we are biased, and yeah, how evidence-based this is. So that's the beginning. And then Andrea, you can tell something about the needs afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, so once the gender vanguards are in place, we have experienced it's very important to provide continuous support and also to give them the tools to do their job well in the committee. So that means they are have tools for monitoring and especially for those merit-based assessments. And I'm referring then to the Biosketch and that effective research time that is part of the application procedure. They also ask for regular updates on gender policy at the university and also gender data targeted to their faculty, because that's an important part, they feel, of convincing others or of being able to participate informed in discussions. They also enjoy the opportunity to exchange with other vanguards of other faculties, to exchange best practices and experiences with people who face similar challenges. And it's important that a staff member is there for support, who they can ask questions to, and also to onboard new gender vanguards, because gender vanguards are normal members of the committees, and so they are elected every 4 years and changed. And lastly, while they have received a training at the start, it's important to keep providing regular trainings to also, get in touch with new knowledge and new questions on implicit bias. So as Hedy said, we have now had our five-year anniversary of Gender Vanguards at the university, which was also a moment to reflect on the system in place and look at the state of the affairs. And if we look at the results at KU Leuven, as Hedy said, our scissor diagram is closing, but very slowly. But we do see in recent years that although women are only 30% of the candidates, they form 40% of the new recruitments for professorships. And that if we look at our data for promotions of professors, that men and women have equal chances of being promoted. So that's numbers we're optimistic about. And moreover, we conducted an interview round with all current gender vanguards, and they testified that their presence makes a difference in the committee. And most of all, they testify that, or they experience that simply having a gender vanguard in place in such a committee, who is a peer of the others, increases the awareness among all committee members, to the extent even that some gender vanguards say, well, in the beginning I had to be more active, and now I see other committee members actually fulfilling my task and calling out when there's gender bias that's being used. So this brought about a gradual cultural change, both in the committee and in the faculty, in which other people are also taking up the task of increasing the awareness in the committee. And they also, for example, testify that while in the beginning people laughed or acted a little adversely when they said, well, this is gendered language, gradually this improved within the committee. We also see that gender vanguards, they sit on the selection committee, but many of them in that way receive very hands-on experience with recruitment policy, and that experience is very valuable for policy. So we see that a good practice that we see in some faculties is that they are also part of the faculty diversity network, which is in each faculty there's a group of people, of staff and students that are dedicated to that faculty diversity policy. And when gender vanguards are part of that group, we see that they use their experience to actually suggest very good policy changes based on their experience in the selection committees. What are challenges we see now after 5 years? Well, we have focused very much on that selection phase, but we see that the biggest gains to be made now are actually in the applicant pool. So the importance of the search committees then come into sight, and also of the earlier career stages, because we see, as Hedy said, an important dropout on the postdoc level. So if we want to increase the number of women in our applicant pool, we will need to focus on the the phases before the assessment committee more in the future. Moreover, many gender vanguards also give us the feedback that they want to broaden their scope from gender bias to implicit bias more broadly, because they also see a need to increase non-European profiles, to increase the cultural and ethnic diversity in their faculty, and they also want tools to both keep the focus on gender, but also being able to bring the broader scope in. In terms of needs, there's also a lot of differences across disciplines and faculties. Some faculties are actually reaching their gender equality targets, especially in the humanities, and I really want to focus on those cultural ethnic backgrounds, whereas other faculties really are their first need is to increase the women in their applicant pool. And then something that will be very important in the coming years is also to monitor and raise awareness about the unequal effect that COVID-19 is having on gender balance in academia, because there's a lot of signs that COVID-19 has an unequal effect on men and women in academia, or people with care responsibilities, which we are together with the other Flemish universities are developing a fact sheet on, so that this can be well, it's actually the Young Academy that does that, that we can raise awareness on that aspect. I'll quickly refer you to some useful tools that we give to our gender vanguards. Some of them are in Dutch, but certainly the video made by Serka and used in the ERC recruitment panels is very useful. And then there's some other links which you will get with the email that sends you this PowerPoint. And some suggested readings. But most of all, thank you. And we look forward to your question, and then I'll stop my screen sharing.
Thanks a lot, Heidi. Thanks a lot, Andrea. It was really a kind of very well-structured, good practice presentation, complementary to Jadranka initial speech, in a way reflecting the call for a systematic approach, which was put forward by Jadranka, and we could see it really made it operational in your gender action plan. But also I really like the fact that while presenting your good practice, you also in a way insisted on the needed preconditions and the needed support, which is not always accounted for in good practices presentation, and are actually very important for assessing possibility to transfer what you are doing in other contexts, right? And also the final remarks on challenges and the way ahead was also very, very interesting. So thanks for that. I see that we have already several questions popping out in our question and answer box, and we were chatting with Natasha, who has already selected a few ones for you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you, Maria. So yeah, thank you all to all our attendees who are really catched by your presentation and continue typing during your presentation. So I will try to make my best to summarize them and to propose you some questions and food for thought for our discussion. I will start from a question from Gordana, who is asking specifically to Jadranka, but it can be a question also to Heidi and Andrea. How the top management in the university can be fostered to apply transparent procedures for career advancement. And to this, I would like to link a reflection from Hilde, who asked, what if the reason why not so women apply is partly due to academic system? Maybe we also need to accept that many women do not want to play the game of academic competition and stress anymore. she see that more men than women in this. We can start with these two, and then we can proceed with the more specific question on gender vanguards.
Yes, may I start answering? Yes, thank you very much for the questions. The first question, how to make the university leadership want more transparency. Well, I mean, the university leadership, in fact, all of them want to be the best guys in the class. So what usually works well is to compare with other universities and to say, look, these universities are doing this and they are a kind of role model. In the EU, it works very well. So usually then you can make a list of other universities, so you can present some materials showing that other well-ranked universities are doing something. And so then the leadership is very likely to decide to follow the example. And perhaps a brief remark about women not wanting to have the stress indeed. But it is what I briefly addressed. If the universities achieve a structure which they have not fully achieved yet, of good working conditions, of a clear career path, this is a very important issue which you see all over Europe, that lots of postdocs are being employed. And without a clear path of how, which requirements you have to fulfill in order to succeed up to the end, there must be transparency about this. Look, you are now on this path. If you manage to do this and that, you will have a chance to have a good university career. This is lacking. So you are rolling from one temporary position to the next, and without a clear perspective. And this is what should change. And this especially affects women, according to the investigations.
Thank you very
much, Jadranka. I also completely agree with Jadranka. Just maybe also a tip to foster the top management is to talk about the why, really to link it to the excellence oriented approach of our universities and the waste of talent, and we can just show it by our figures. Therefore the figures are so important, and that's something sensitive for our leaders indeed. Yeah.
Thank you both for your insight. I would go to some questions that are made from our attendees about the gender vanguards. Hilde is asking what is the gender of the vanguards and how they deal with conflict of interest in those committee meetings. To this, I would also link another question. Let me just find it.
The question by Charula, maybe, which was also completely on vanguards. At which stage of the process gender vanguards provide feedback to the committee? How do you address potential risks in terms of the vanguards becoming the gender persons in the organization with some negative connotations? And how do you see the future of these processes about how you can move to a future without gender vanguards?
Thank you, Maria. Yes.
Maybe to what the gender is of the gender vanguard. So it changes, but at the moment 6 out of 15 are men. So here there we reach our one third of each sex target. What training do they receive was another question. So they receive especially at the beginning, they have received quite intensive training, and we usually invite people who do research on implicit bias in academic careers. And it's a training in which we try to bring them all together, and also link that to a part of intervision where there can be exchange. And next to that, they also participate in the general training that the selection committees receive on open, transparent, and merit-based recruitment. That's one thing. Heidi, I don't know if you want to add something or...
Yeah, about the question on the negative connotation, I don't have an impression that they have a negative connotation in our university, just because of they are full part of the selection committees, and they are full professor. That is one of the requirements to become a member of the committees. So they already have a kind of a position in their faculties. Because Gender Vanguard is just one role and not their main role or exclusive role. Therefore, it's a role that's accepted. So the Gender Vanguards, Andrea, I guess also in the evaluations, there is no negative connotation on this. No.
That we receive, and I think the fact that they are full members and chosen within the group really contributes to that. Usually we see that the committee, that those are people that have a reputation, for example, for having a very diverse research group, or being very well or good in dealing with diversity, or have a dedication to that. But they're full members, and I think that I haven't received any feedback on that. And conflicts of interest was in the last question. That's part of the whole way the assessment committee is assembled. There's several rules of avoiding conflict of interest, so it's not something that they themselves have to care about. But committee members are only hired in the highest two ranks of professorships, so they never are asked to make an assessment of someone among their own ranks, and that's one part of the conflict of interest avoidance. I think we answered all the questions, but I'm not. Yeah, sorry.
May I just briefly add, indeed, as you mentioned, Germany, for the last instance of deciding on full professorship appointments, this is the Senate. And there you have to have a professor specialized in gender issues to fulfill this role. And this is an excellent point also of Leuven, because really one can notice that younger staff members do not dare to really argue against higher positioned professors for a number of reasons. Reasons of seniority, reasons of future career, and so on. So it is very important that you are doing it in this way.
Thank you both. We are running a bit late, but there are other, I will do the last round of questions since there are so many that needs to be answered still. So let me go back. There is a question from Natalie who asks, how can you also make sure that at the stage of the faculty, there is an attention to the issue of a balance in recruitment? We know that the writing of the post and channel for communication, for example, are important. Do you envisage action at this level as well? And then there are two questions on the Biosketch. Lina is asked about a sample of it, and Gabriel answered that in their experience with Biosketches is that they also showed bias, even when written by the applicants themselves. How did you deal with this? And this was specifically to Heidi and Andrea. So I would ask Jadranka to answer to the first one, maybe, and Heidi and Andrea to the second one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is important to have gender vanguards at all levels. So at the faculty level as well. And it is quite important that there be a person. This is what we experienced also at the faculty level. This is the experience now from Heidelberg and from, in fact, the rest of Germany, because this is prototypical. Because at the faculty level, you also have to weigh the specific field scientific experience of the candidates. And there we noticed that sometimes arguments were used which were not fully fully grounded, and you need someone from the specific area also at this first level. But then the final decision is taken indeed with a gender vanguard who is really overlooking it all. You do need different kinds of experiences. So the field-specific experience, including gender and diversity, and the university-wide experience on these matters.
And with regard to the question on the Biosketch, it's certainly an instrument that's not perfect yet. But one part of preventing that aspect, I think the bias that slips in, and even the letters that people write themselves, is that there's also that part in the training that it's important that gender vanguards also have the information to know that men and women are socialized to emphasize different qualities sometimes, and to take that into account when using the Biosketch as an assessment tool. But it's also part of how we communicate as an institution, how you should use the Biosketch. So also there, we need to be aware of that.
Yeah, there was a big discussion in our university on the Biosketch, in the sense of there was a group who really wanted us to work on quantification of non-academic experience, or also time that people had to take off, for example, to have children or elderly leave or things like that. But then there was another voice that said, if we all actually want to go to a more qualitative approach, and if we put all this in a quantitative approach, aren't we fighting actually just a small part of the system and not reflecting upon what we really want? And there the discussion ended actually with this kind of Biosketch, where we describe experiences, and we can still add the quantitative data on how many years of experiences outside of the university, for example, of raising kids, of other things, life experiences. But it's also a way really to stimulate recruitment committees to reflect upon the qualitative and the global part within recruitment. Yeah.
Indeed. Thanks a lot to all of you. I really think that just to wrap up, because unfortunately we have so many interesting answers, other questions in the Q&A box, but at the same time we have already run out of time, and we see that slowly attendees start to leave the room. So I think that both your presentations were really inspiring, because they
I think.
Okay.
I lost you.
Sorry, I don't know what happened. Sorry. No, I was just saying that the common thread, in a way, in your presentations was, I think, a transformative approach to the measures, aiming at not only increasing gender balance, but also changing and transforming the institutional culture at universities, and the way research careers are valued and assessed in a broader way. Clearly, there's no magic wand. We know you have stressed it also, and holistic approaches and accountability are highly needed. So having said this, I would thank you again, all of you, for your speeches, and also all our participants for an active participation to the webinar and all the questions. Maybe Vasia, would you like to invite to the next sessions of the GE Academy?
Yes, thank you very much, Maria. I will briefly share my screen for that reason. So on what is coming up, we would really like to see you in the next set of training sessions. We are starting with creating your gender equality plans, which is a 3-part session for actually beginners. Then we have why is gender relevant in teaching in STEM and how to integrate it on the 12th of November. Bridging the gaps, which is actually a session for CE countries, Central European and Eastern countries. And then gender sensitive leadership, what does it take? So we have 4 different topics in 4 different dates. You may check out actually more information on the website and see if you fall out down of the categories of what's in it. Thank you very much for the webinar today. So have a good evening.
And just check our YouTube channel for the recordings, because there were many participants asking for the presentations, but you can, we are not going to make presentations by themselves available, but the recordings will be there. So all the interesting resources which were made available by our speakers will be there. Thanks again. Goodbye.
Goodbye to all.